Hello, Dena Krigbaum. or
Hello, Dirk.
Krigbaum. I can't.
Hello, Dirk Pointer.
Oh, it's funny. So it was really good to connect with you. We hooked up again after 25 years on a
Mhm.
Zoom call about a month ago, and I found out that you are involved. Well, you work in the foster care system in Illinois,
Mhm.
specifically Peoria, right? Or do you work across the whole state?
Specifically, Peoria.
Okay.
There's a couple of counties in this area that we serve, but primarily in Peoria and Pekin,
Okay.
Illinois. Yep.
Yeah, and so we got off that Zoom call, just kind of a reunion of people we knew in college, and um, we were talking a little bit, and I just said, hey, I'd really love to get you on and talk about your story because, I've had somebody on. Our first story was somebody who was a surrogate, and then we've
Mhm.
had an open adoption pair who was in Canada and Australia, which was really awesome.
Wow.
And so you're in the foster care system, which is related to that whole, it
Yeah.
all kind of goes in together. It's all,
Mhm.
taking care of children, I guess would be the way to look at it.
Right.
So my first question is, how did you get started doing that?
Well, by completely by accident, which I've found that there are just very, very few people that that go to college and set up as a foster care caseworker. That person is extremely rare. Most people that work in foster care seem to have stumbled into it some way or another. And uh, I had, we were mentioning earlier that I had been working in as a youth pastor and had a decision to leave that rather abruptly. And at that time, I was um, also living in the church parsonage. So in one fell swoop, I'm like, I quit, and I, 2 weeks notice, I had to move out of my house. I had to move back in with my parents at almost 30 years old. It was terrible. But at the same time, saying, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know, because that was what I had prepared for. So anyway, so kind of in the meantime, not knowing what to do with my life, I knew I was at least qualified to substitute teach. So that's what I was doing. Did that for about 6 months. And then one day I was substitute teaching. And in the classroom, I heard a very, very familiar voice, like a voice from my childhood. And I go in the hallway, and it's one of my best friends from high school, was substitute teaching across the hall. And we were so excited to see each other. We were like, "Is that you?" And then we looked at, we checked each other's ID badges, and then it was really funny. But she was, substitute teaching as addition to her full-time job, which was to work in a residential facility that is also here in Peoria, which is part of child welfare. It's for kids that are um, most of them are within the foster care system, but have either mental health or behavioral issues or both that make it too severe for them to be maintained in a foster home. So they require basically inpatient treatment. Um, so I got a job working there, did that for a couple of years, then realized that the master's I had earned in seminary could apply to a lot of different jobs within child welfare. I worked as a therapist to specialized youth for about a year after that. And then the third step was as a foster care case manager supervisor. So yeah, fell into it. It's dumb luck. If she hadn't been across the hall, I don't think I would have ended up here. So,
Yeah. Well, you've
but
always
I
had the
really
heart.
loved it once I got in there.
Yeah.
I found out that it was a really good fit for me. So,
When you mentioned you were a youth minister, and so you've had
mhm.
the heart for helping kids and dealing, and just from knowing you back when I knew you, you just had a big heart in general. So that's a good fit. So wait, so you said there's a residential facility for kids that I guess are um, have I don't know the right word, special needs kids that maybe can't get placed, or
Mhm.
is it that they can't, or that there's just a very low probability and the state makes a choice to put them in a residential facility?
So usually, now that I'm on the other end of it and have had to have my kids that I'm working with put into a residential home, um, it's usually such a combination of things. But if I can start out at one of the biggest issues that you'll have with kids is attachment disorders. And you put them in a family and they react very strongly to somebody that's trying to fill a role where it wasn't met before. So usually, I mean, they will target that maternal figure in sometimes very violent ways, or they will, in their mentality of, listen, this is not unconditional. You have a line. I'm gonna find that line, and they will keep pushing until it happens. Until whether there's physical aggression, whether they're destroying the house, whether they're running away, um, any number of things to where it is not safe for anybody, and they're not getting that. They're not, like, if you're running all the time, they're not going to school. They're not, so in the residential, it takes some of the pressure off of trying to be part of a family system. You're able to have a little bit more of a distance, and they're able to sometimes they're able to settle in and actually deal with some of their feelings that are going on. I don't know. I know I talked around a little bit there. Some
No,
kids
that
have
makes
very
sense.
severe mental health issues too, coming from some pretty severe abuse and neglect sometimes.
So do those facilities exist everywhere? I mean, I honestly don't, because it sounds bluntly, it sounds like an orphanage. The kind of our
Yeah,
classic definition of, not classic, I guess, because that would be every kid at one point, but it's a home for
yeah.
kids without parents.
It's right. It is the difference between a residential treatment facility and an orphanage is uh, the emphasis on treatment. That the staff to youth ratio is going to be much smaller, and um, they'll have groups, they'll have therapies, they'll have a lot of things really suited to meet their needs. They're much smaller. Usually you might have a unit of somewhere between 8 and 20, depending on, usually the age groups are matched up with their needs. So you might have some for a developmentally delayed population. You might have some that have sexualized behaviors in that population. Um, for girls, it's just like, well, there's a girls unit. It's not as specialized. There's not as many placements for girls. But yeah, it is. They do have them in at least neighboring states that I know of.
So how successful? I'm going to stick on that residential facility for a minute
Mhm.
because that's interesting. Because I honestly, if we have it here, I'm in Missouri. If we have it, I don't know about it, but it
I don't
makes
know.
sense because
Yeah.
you do have those kids that, I mean, a lot of these kids have been through hell. I mean, right?
Yes.
And now they're put in a situation and they don't know how to deal with, I guess, a normal situation, whenever that might be. But so you have to work with them. Is there a pretty good success rate of getting those kids into society as productive members, or is that a super challenge by the time they come there?
They have a lot of challenges. I would not say that the success rate is high. Yeah, I don't think that it's good, but it depends on what you're measuring success as. But kids that are older and in the foster care system, they got a lot of strikes against them. They don't have. There's a high number of them that end up homeless shortly after being discharged. And there's a lot of programs to try to help them transition, but it's tough. It's tough. So
So, um, tell me about your organization. So you don't work for the state of Illinois. You work for like a foster care organization.
hmm
And
yeah, I
is
work for a private agency, and I didn't actually get their permission to be on a podcast, so I don't. I thought about that. Am I going to be allowed to talk about it? They're usually pretty big on PR stuff, but um,
you could
so
find
I'll just
out.
speak about it.
I can hold it till you
Yeah,
find out. That's fine.
yeah. So it's called the Children's Home. It's in Peoria, and they do actually a ton of different services in the community. They actually have a residential facility as part of it. They have a school that's not just for kids that live within that. They have a school for the whole community for very special needs. So even a lot of the outside districts, if they have a kid that has severe behaviors, they will bus them in to the school that's at my agency. They have foster care. They have intact services, which is where DCFS still gets called in. There's an investigation, and this is where they leave the kids home with the parents and try to offer services without causing the trauma, removing them. Let's see what else they got. They have so many. They've got a youth homeless program. They've got a program for independent living for kids that are older that are in the foster care system. Got a program called Good Beginnings. That's for just anybody in the community that's expecting and needs some help getting on their feet after they have a child. So yeah, it's a pretty big organization. It has about 400 employees and has been working in the community for 150 years. So, and of course, started as an orphanage.
Well, right. Yeah,
150
150 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have 400 employees in Peoria?
Yes.
How many people are in Peoria?
Well, we're doing a census this year. I think within Peoria itself, it's like 110,000. But then in
Okay.
the surrounding communities, you probably get up to, I don't know, another 100. You're Googling it.
I'm looking it up. Yeah, we're gonna. The exciting part of the podcast is me looking at the
Right.
population. 111,000. So out of 111,000, you have 400 people that are working in the basically foster care or youth care, kind of almost. It sounds
Yeah,
like.
just at one agency. There's about 5 agencies in town. Those are private agencies. That's not the people that work at the state for that. So,
That
and I would say wholeheartedly that we don't have nearly enough in this community.
that blows me away.
Yeah.
Are you working with other communities from the surrounding areas too? Do their kids
A
come to
little,
Peoria?
yes. We have, so we serve officially the Tri-County area, which is going to be Woodford County, Tazewell County, and Peoria County. Peoria is by far the biggest of those counties. We don't do much in Woodford. We just might get a case from them. But yeah.
Yeah, 400 people sounds like a
I'm trying to think of
Chicago
how many
employment.
kids. Oh, Chicago. Yeah. Cook County. The foster care system there is overloaded quite a bit too. I'm trying to think how many kids we have in foster care right now, just with our agency. I don't know.
Okay. So
Sure it's 100, but
what exactly do you work on? What's your job?
so I supervise the case managers. I supervise 4 to 5 case managers. So a case manager is a caseworker. It's a person that is assigned the case, and so it's after DCFS or CPS or whatever you call it in Missouri or whatever state you're in. Child Protective Services will do an investigation. They decide that the children need to be removed from their parents. Usually they'll try to find a relative to place with. Sometimes they can't. Then we'll have traditional homes. And after the kids are in the placement, that's when we take over. That's when I take over. And so we work with the courts. We work with the bio families, the parents that have whatever's going on. And we work with the foster families and, of course, the kids. And so for any case, just about almost all of the cases, there are some pretty extreme cases where we don't, but for the most part, excuse me, voice is a little dry. We're working with the parents to try to do everything we can to say, okay, if the situation came in because of domestic violence, because of physical abuse, because of drugs, then we're going to try to work with that family to, and this is, jargon, correct the conditions which brought the children into care. So we sending them to classes, probably counseling, stuff like that. And then, help the children with their needs. A lot of times they've been exposed to a lot of trauma. So their counseling, educational needs, all that stuff. And of course, the superheroes are the foster parents who are trying to take care of a child that's not theirs, who has all of these needs, and uh, day in, day out. So
Do most of your
so I supervise those people.
okay, yeah. Do most of your foster parents? Do most of them just have one kid at a time, or will they have multiple kids at a time, or how does that work?
Most of the time, they have more than one kid. We do everything we can to keep siblings together. Um, a lot of times, it's not possible because there's too many of them. We might have a kid or a case that comes in with 5 children, and I don't know too many families that can, the drop of a hat, take on 5 extra kids. Um, so, yeah, most people have more than one, um, but it just depends.
And as a foster parent, would you expect to? Is the general expectation that you'll just continue as a foster parent? For for the duration, or are some of those people looking to adopt, or somewhere in between, or what's the general rule there? I guess, or not rule, but how it
So,
works.
when I talk to prospective foster parents, I always tell them the most important thing you need to realize is that it will 100% of the time break your heart. Like you are in for, it's going to crush your soul. So welcome aboard. No, because we're going to hand you this child or these children, and we're going to ask you to love them as your own. And one of two things is going to happen. One is that the parent is going to do everything that they need to do, and then you're going to need to give those children back, and you may never see them again. But what's worse is that we're going to give these children and ask you to love them, and then you're going to watch their biological parents not do what they need to do, not meet their need, and continue to let these children down, and that's going to break your heart even more. So there are some foster parents that get into it. I'm steering back around to your question. And they are, very clear, like, we are fostering, we're here to help out, but we are not here to adopt. But ideally, if a case does go to adoption, we want that child to be able to stay with the family that they've been with. We don't want to have to move them again, because that's going to cause more trauma. So, and of course, that's part of why we don't have enough foster homes, because we're like, hey, you've adopted these last 5 kids, but you want some more? And people will
Yeah,
usually say, got to draw the line somewhere.
yeah. There's a
So,
limit, right? I mean,
right.
emotionally, monetarily, all of it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, do you see a lot of adoption in with your foster kids? Is that pretty? I mean, somewhat or
Yeah.
pretty common?
Yeah, it is. I really was thinking about preparing for this and looking up numbers, but I didn't. Um, so, so yes, and I don't want to throw anything out there, but that does happen quite often. Is that the kids that are not able to be united with their parents, are adopted by their foster parents.
Yeah. So, if someone was looking to become a foster parent, it sounds like there is a need, and
Yes,
I'm sure that's in every community everywhere in the country that there's a need. Um,
absolutely. Yes.
yeah. How do you go about doing that?
Well, if you're thinking about it, I would definitely encourage you to do so. To think about it and do some research. Um, I know I'm very biased. I think that private agencies do it better than the state does. Um, but I would suggest definitely doing some research as far as agencies within your community that has, foster care. Um, and just call any of them up, and they will usually be able to direct you to um, their licensing department to explain what training is required and what background checks, that sort of thing. If you don't have any other agencies, then go ahead and call the Child Protective Services, or look them up online, and they will be able to direct you on how to become a foster parent. Yeah.
So yeah, is it a long process to qualify and get a kid? I mean, or they just do some basic background checks, or how do you qualify to be a foster parent?
In Illinois, it's the only one I can speak to, is you definitely have background checks. I'm pretty sure you have a physical and a TB test. They're going to do a walkthrough of your home. You have to make some modifications to your home. You have to lower the temperature of your water much more than is comfortable for a grown-up.
Wait, what? What does that mean?
So that you don't burn the kids accidentally. So I forget how low it is, but it's like, that's just lukewarm, man. And
I've never heard of that. So you have to turn your hot water.
Turn your water down. Yeah. I don't know how low it is. It's just I hear the foster parents complain about it.
Really? So that's just a safety precaution that I assume the state requires it to make sure that the kids don't. But I mean, if you're in a normal home, you can. I mean, all right. Okay. Why is that?
I'm sure it's because one too many kid got burned before they made that rule.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted there.
I'm just really through you.
One kind of surprised
me. And then
there's
going to be the last thing is that there's going to be some type of training. In Illinois, it's called Pride, and it takes, I think there's like 3 or 4 3-hour classes that you go to, and then you're good.
And then you'd have like continued visits and training. You talk to your caseworker consistently.
Yeah. And then once you're connected with either the DCFS or the agency, then they'll start calling you with placements probably a lot sooner than you're ready for. And this is something to keep in mind. I think it's very important for foster parents to be able to have good boundaries. And there are times when you need to say no. You need to be able to, so if you get that call, you'll have some foster parents who will just say yes, because I can't ever say no, which I understand, but then they'll get in over their heads, and then the kids will be placed with them, and something's going to happen, and they end up having to move again. So to really, if you have kids, if you have a spouse, to definitely, before you say yes, consult with all the family members, make sure everybody's on board, and consider whether or not it's a good fit for you. Because a bad fit is not good for the kids either. So, but no, I've known people to wait a couple months. If it's longer than that, you probably need to call and check and see what's going on, because there's kids that need homes just about every day.
So when you say consider whether it's a good fit, you mean the actual child is a good fit with you, or what do you mean?
I think if you and your spouse sat down and said, I think we could probably take one child, and then they called and said, hey, we got a sibling group of 3, and you think, oh, well, we have room for 3, but you might have enough space in your house for 3, but you yourselves, maybe you never parented before, and going from 0 to 3 is they're going to outnumber you.
And we did that in 2.5 years, so yeah.
Yes. And they know each other, and they got tricks that you know about. Or if they've got behaviors that are, let me give an example. So I had, she'll be fine with me sharing. She worked in foster care, but also was a foster parent herself. And she and her husband would take anything, any kid, anytime. She had one thing though, and I honestly can't remember if this was her or a different one, but the poop smearers. That was the line. Like if there's poop on the wall, she couldn't do it, and it happens. And I feel like maybe it's a good idea to go ahead and share that is among the things. And you got to know, if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't take that kid.
Well, I mean, that's having kids. I don't,
Well, I agree. That's why I don't have them.
Are these?
I don't like poop.
Are you talking a little bit more like purposeful poop smears? Is that what you're saying? Or okay?
Yeah, right, older. Yeah. We're not talking changing diapers. We're talking.
That doesn't seem worth it to me. I don't think I'd want to. Anyway. What I mean is, it doesn't seem worth it to me to get the smear on the wall with my hand. I think I'd rather just.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Some people really have a hard time if somebody steals from them or is disrespectful or any number of things that you don't know where your line is necessarily until it's right in front of you. But it's a good idea to know where that's at.
I would think that's the hardest thing is when you raise a child from as a baby in your house, you've instituted your family and your home culture on them from the moment they hit the world. And
Right.
so, and I think my understanding is not a child psychologist, but by the time a kid's 5, you know, the culture that they have is embedded in them, right? For the most
Hmm.
part. And
Oh yeah,
anything else you have to
absolutely.
break. So, you bring in a 7-year-old kid who's been raised under probably difficult circumstances. Um, it, you know, impacting them with whatever culture you've got is going to be a real challenge. So how much can you bend and where can you bend and that would be that's something you
Hmm.
really have to consider.
Yeah, and this is a reason why, because you like if it's a 7-year-old, and I'm thinking that's usually 7-year-old, and if they have younger brothers and sisters, they're usually in a parent role of those kids if they're coming into foster care, and sometimes they end up getting separated from those kids, and so they're worried sick. They also feel like it's their fault, and there's just so much going on with them, and yeah, so to really be cognizant as a foster parent to say, okay, I think I can meet this child's needs, or at least, with the help of the team, that we can do it together. Because the kids, they've gone through so much.
If you
Yeah.
have a situation like that where you have to separate siblings,
Oof.
do they still get to see each other? Is there some kind of system for that where they can get together once a week or something, or every how does that work?
That was a real failure of the system for a long time. That siblings would get separated, they'd get adopted, and they wouldn't know each other's names because they'd change their names. And I had some teenagers, this is probably 10 years ago, a teenager asked me, he's like, can you help me? I know I've got brothers and sisters. Can you help me try to find them? I was like, yeah, you know their names? He goes, no. I'm like, I mean, I can try, but I don't know. And there's just this such sadness. So, and again, to answer your question, that's something that has gotten better. And in Illinois, certainly, and I think this is a federal thing, I'm not 100% sure, but the rules are that they have, if they're not placed together, they have to be able to spend at least 4 hours a month together, ideally much more.
Yeah.
And one way that we handle that is by encouraging the foster parents to get to know each other and spend time like as families, like have them spend the night, trade off weekends, that sort of thing. And they're better for it when they can see their brothers and sisters.
Do you
So,
also keep better records now than maybe they used to? Maybe you would think that if a kid comes and says they changed their names, you'd say, well, let me pull up the record for when this happened and that's right, it'll be right there. But I guess that wasn't the case.
I mean, we have, since things have been computerized, we've got a database, but there's things that get, completely locked after an adoption is done. So, yes, but they do, one of the requirements that we have and that we're supposed to give to the brothers and sisters are the names of the caregivers, where their names and phone numbers of the caregivers where their siblings are placed at, and keep that up to date for them so that they can keep track of them and, you know, yeah, be able to hunt them down.
Sounds like that happens a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I hate it. I hate it. Now that I've been doing this a long time, I've got ones that I look back on, and ones that I wish we didn't have. At the time, we tried so hard to keep them together, but ultimately they ended up being separated. And I'm like, God, now they're teenagers now, and I don't know what happened. If they're able to see each other, but it still eats it. It still eats at me because I know how close they were when they were little, and I cannot imagine. So
So would those kids have been adopted then? Because as long as they're
yeah,
foster kids, you're monitoring them on a consistent basis, no matter how long it is, right? But once they get
yeah,
adopted, it's they're a family and that's their own
right.
thing.
Yeah, once they're adopted, the legal relationship is ended with the state, so all that stuff closes out. Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that it'll break your heart. And I can see that because if you become a foster parent, if that's on your heart to do, you probably have a very open heart. I mean, I hate to
Mhm.
keep saying heart, but you probably are very yes, but you probably are very a very giving and open and loving person, we might, generally speaking, I'm sure there's some
Yeah.
people that take advantage of whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
um, and to have, yeah, boy, that's a lot to sacrifice. It really is for a
Yeah,
family.
and you have people that have kids of their own, and it's like it's going to mess with your family. Like it's going to affect your children and how much attention that you could give to them, and it's going to affect probably your relationship with your significant other. It's going to affect that. It's going to impact everything in your life, and you know that's why I said, God bless you.
Yeah,
Foster parents. I've got coworkers, so many who are both caseworkers and foster parents, and I'm amazed because I need to come home and separate. I need to take to be able to take a breath, and so they are people that just truly amaze me at how much they have to give because I get tired.
yeah,
Um,
I can
so.
imagine it would have to be emotionally exhausting on you as well, just because you're in every relationship, right?
hmm Yeah, and I supervise, so that means that there's so many more cases, so many more people, more kids that and I mean, I enjoy. I really do love it. Which is a piece that I don't want to get lost in this. Is that it? I love working with the kids. I really, really love it when we can work with the family and be able to send those kids home. Um, when that happens, that's a good day.
Yeah, what are the tools in place you have to deal with a family that has lost their children and um, wants them back? I guess what kind of tools and programs do you have in place for that family or parents? I guess.
So, DCFS doesn't by themselves have the authority to remove the children. They can for up to 72 hours, but aside from that, judge has to get involved. So then you're involved with the court system. And the court will usually court order different services that they would need to do at our recommendation. Um, but my goodness, almost every case was flat out, just about everybody gets a parenting class, which frankly, my opinion, you should get that at the hospital before you're allowed to leave with the kid, no matter who you are, because they don't come with a manual, and they should. They're top heavy, always falling on their heads. I mean, how many of us survive to adulthood? You've got boys,
Yeah, they're pretty
yeah,
top heavy when they're little. Yeah, they got those
very
big
top
heads.
heavy,
Yeah.
and they're daredevils too. They have no fear. So yeah, parenting class, usually some type of counseling, usually some, and then there's uh, the underlying issues for why the case came into care. So if there's domestic violence, drug abuse, uh, yeah, those are the big ones. Honestly, right now that's what we see the most of is substance abuse.
Yeah.
That this opiate epidemic has gotten a lot of foster kids in care. It's bad. Um,
Greed is bad.
yeah.
Um, sorry, I was talking about the drug companies there. I apologize. But
Yeah.
do you have cases where kids are? Yeah, I hate to say, but our kids are in and out. I mean, back and forth with their family and in foster care and
I try real hard not to. Yes, sometimes we'll get one that's back in care. I try real hard, as much as possible to, make sure we're addressing with them. And I know I try to teach my workers this too, that, we want this not, they aren't just jumping through hoops. They're not just, okay, check, I took a parenting class, check, I did a substance abuse assessment. That you're taking the classes, but then you're applying it, and you're talking with us about what you learned and how that's going to be different. And we do that because this is part of the conversation we end up having with them is, I don't want to see you again. Love you. I've enjoyed the time working with you, but I don't ever want to see you guys again. So yes, it does happen, but we try real hard not to, because the back and forth, the kids, kids need predictability, and if they don't know if somebody's coming to take them away at any point in time, that's their world, and that's terrifying. So try real hard not to send them home if it's not going to be safe, or not until it is safe. So, yeah, which happens, but.
What, well, I had a question and it left me. Yeah,
All
I
right.
remember. If it's important, I'll
Why
remember.
not? All
My
right.
mom always used to say it must have been pretty important if you forgot it. I
Nice.
think she still says that, actually.
I think is she being sarcastic?
My mom, my mother? Yes. I'll tell you what it, yeah, I'll tell you a quick story about my mother, and it has
All
nothing to
right.
do. So she used to go to Bible study once a week, and she came home from Bible study one time, and she had learned, I think, the Greek root or Latin root of the word sarcasm
Mm-hmm.
literally meant the tearing of the flesh.
I was gonna say, I'm like,
Yeah.
sarca is flesh.
Okay. Well, there you, I didn't.
So
Okay. So
yeah,
is that Latin then, or is that
Greek.
Greek?
Yeah, Greek.
My Greek, I went to seminary for a year and a half, and I don't remember it. I'm in Alpha Beta.
You
So.
didn't take any Greek?
No, I did, but you know, I'm
I had
fluent in
lived,
ancient Greek, but who else is I? You
yeah. I had
know.
taken Russian, or I had lived in Ukraine before I flew home and took the intensive Greek class, and it turns out the only difference between Russian and Greek is the vocabulary and the alphabet. Aside from that, they're exactly the same.
But
No, but seriously, like the grammar is exactly the same.
so
Anyway,
you were in Ukraine as a missionary on a mission trip at the
yeah,
time.
yep, yep.
What did you do there? Did you work with kids there?
It was Ted set that up. That was the college
Okay,
ministry that we were setting up and coordinated with CCF and everything.
awesome.
Yeah,
So, is there anything else about the foster care system that I have not covered that that you'd like to hit on?
probably so much. Like I said, I did spend some time this past week thinking about the stuff I would want to make sure that I said. I think one of the biggest things would be that, it's really easy to get caught up, especially in the world as crazy as it is right now. And the thing about the kids that are in foster care, the children, they don't have anybody, they don't have any voices. They don't have anybody in politics. They don't have anybody in media. They're just trying to survive, and they're doing their best. And it's really easy to forget that they exist, to forget that, I just always say this: they don't vote. They're not gonna vote. They're not gonna grow up and vote. So it's real easy for them to get forgotten in all of the discussions of everything that's happening in the world. Um, so I guess the ultimate message would be: don't forget about them. They're there. They don't deserve what happened to them, and they do deserve people looking out for them. So if any of your listeners have any compassion or heart for kids in foster care, obviously we need foster parents, we need caseworkers, we need there's an organization in Peoria that exists that created itself to be a support for foster care caseworkers and foster parents. And so they do things like helping make repairs in the foster parent house and decorate the visiting rooms at the agencies, and they give us gift baskets and things around the holidays. It's like, hey, we know you're working hard, here's some cookies, stuff like that. So just to be a support. If you know anybody that works in foster care as a foster parent, if you know someone as a foster parent, offer to watch the kids for a night because they need a break. I promise you they do. Offer to watch the kids and send them to the movies or something. So
Can't go to the movie right now though.
that's fair. They can
Go to the
they can stay
outdoor
at home
park.
with But all the more so, this quarantine, we've got these kids that have exceptional behavioral needs. Now they're not going to school, they're stuck at home, they can't go anywhere. And these superhero, amazing foster parents have taken care of them solo, by themselves, without all the supports that are usually there. So all the more so. Foster parents are amazing.
Awesome.
Better than me, that's for sure.
I don't know about that.
I just do the casework, man. This day in, day out stuff. They're superheroes.
Well, it's got to be done. Somebody's got to do all that and handle the courts and know how to.
Yeah,
I mean, if you haven't been to court, like if you become a foster parent and you got to go to court, you don't know what you're doing. You need somebody who's been doing it over and over and over again.
that's true. That's true. need us to explain the complicated, messed up system that it is. So.
That sounds like another conversation.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, we could probably talk for another hour about the foster care system itself. Yeah.
We'll get it done another time. How about that?
Fair enough.
All right, Dena. Well, it was really good to have a good conversation here.
Yeah.
And for anybody that's listening and has at heart, definitely get involved. And thanks for sharing, Dena. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Dirk.
Okay, Dena. It was good to connect, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right.
All right.